The massive Imperial scout ship emerged from hyperspace near Jupiter, its golden hull reflecting the distant sunlight. The crew aboard had expected another routine exploration mission. Instead, they found themselves staring at signs of an active civilization. Admiral Tom James stood on the bridge of the UES Defender, his weathered face showing no emotion as he watched the alien vessel approach. At 60 years old, he had spent most of his life preparing Earth for this moment. The massive view screen showed the Imperial ship, nearly 3 times the size of his vessel. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies, sir," reported Officer Mike from his station. "Universal Translation Matrix is processing their language." James nodded, his gray eyes fixed on the screen. "Put them through when ready." The face that appeared on the screen belonged to a humanoid being with pale blue skin and silver eyes. He wore an ornate uniform covered in symbols of rank and achievement. "I am Lord Regent of the Eternal Galactic Empire. Your solar system falls within our expansion zone. We expect your immediate surrender and integration into our society." James kept his face neutral, though inside he felt a mix of amusement and concern. The Empire clearly hadn't done their homework. "This is Admiral James of the United Earth Defense Force. We welcome peaceful contact, but we do not surrender to anyone." The Lord Regent's expression shifted to one of confusion, then amusement. "You misunderstand. This is not a negotiation. Our scans show your civilization has barely achieved basic space travel. Your ships use primitive chemical propulsion. We have ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. Resistance would be—" He paused, searching for the right word. "Foolish." Behind James, the bridge crew maintained their positions, many hiding small smiles. Earth had learned long ago to hide its true capabilities. What the Empire saw as primitive chemical rockets were actually carefully disguised ships, masking their true technology. "Lord Regent," James spoke carefully, "perhaps we should discuss this further. We can arrange a proper diplomatic meeting." "Enough." The Lord Regent cut him off. "You will submit, or we will demonstrate our power. You have 1 Earth day to reconsider your position." The transmission cut off abruptly. James turned to his crew. "Send word to command. It's time to wake up the fleet." Deep beneath the lunar surface, in a massive hidden chamber, thousands of advanced warships sat waiting. Unlike the simple vessels visible to the Empire's scans, these ships represented the true might of humanity. Each one carried weapons and defenses developed through centuries of human conflict. In the underground war room on Earth, the military council gathered. Representatives from all major nations sat around a circular table, viewing holographic displays of the Imperial ship. "They think we're primitive because that's what we wanted them to see," James explained to the council. "Our observers have watched their empire expand for the last 50 years. They've never faced real resistance. They've never fought a true war." General Thompson, an older man with a scared face, leaned forward. "They have no idea what they're walking into, do they?" "No," James replied, bringing up historical footage on the main display. "They've never seen anything like human warfare. They don't understand what thousands of years of conflict have taught us." The display showed scenes from human history, ancient battles, modern wars, and finally, the technological advances that followed. "We learned to fight in the dirt before we reached for the stars. Every advancement we made came from our need to survive against each other." "Should we show them?" asked Council Member Roberts. "Give them a real warning." James nodded. "We'll send one message, one chance for them to understand what they're facing." Back on the UES Defender, James prepared to transmit Earth's response. The message was simple, accompanied by carefully selected footage of Earth's military history, showing the progression of human warfare from swords to nuclear weapons. "Lord Regent," James spoke clearly, his voice carrying the weight of human history. "We have spent more time fighting wars than your empire has existed. What you see as primitive is merely what we choose to show. This is not a threat, but a warning. Run. Run while you can." The message was sent, And James knew the Empire would laugh it off. They wouldn't understand. Not yet. He looked out at the stars, knowing that soon they would learn why humans had always hoped to find peaceful first contact. Because humans knew war better than anyone in the galaxy, and the Empire was about to learn this the hard way. 24 hours after Earth's warning, the Lord Regent's laughter echoed through the Imperial command ship. He had just finished showing Earth's message to his war council, and none of them seemed worried. These humans think they can scare us with images of their tiny wars. The Lord Regent wiped tears of amusement from his silver eyes. Look at them, fighting with metal sticks and chemical weapons. How primitive. Deep within Earth's Cheyenne Mountain complex, Admiral James watched the Empire's response through hidden sensors. He turned to the military council, his face serious. They're reacting exactly as expected. Show them the truth. General Thompson pressed a button, and the room's lights dimmed. A massive hologram appeared, showing Earth's real military strength. Hidden bases on Mars lit up like stars. Asteroid bases that the Empire thought were mining stations revealed their true nature. They were weapon platforms. While they laughed, James said, "We finish waking up our forces. Status report." Officer Mike, who had followed him from the Defender, stepped forward. "The AI fleet is online. Nanoforge production is at full capacity. Quantum shields are charged. The Ghost fleet is ready to launch from Jupiter's clouds." The council members watched as more reports came in. Every piece of human technology they had hidden for decades was now active and ready. "They saw our old wars," Thompson said, walking through the hologram of Earth's defenses. "But they don't understand what those wars taught us. Each conflict pushed us to build better weapons, stronger defenses." James nodded. "And we learned the most important lesson, how to hide our strength until the right moment." On the main screen, they watched as the Empire began moving more ships into the solar system. Their scans still showed only Earth's decoy forces, old rockets and simple space stations. "Sir," Mike called out, "they're broadcasting another message." The Lord Regent's face appeared on screen, still looking amused. "We've reviewed your pathetic attempt at intimidation. Your footage of ground battles with primitive weapons only proves our superiority. Submit now or face our might." James stood up, straightening his uniform. "Send them the second package." Mike pressed a few buttons, and a new transmission began. This time, they showed the Empire something different. Not the old wars, but the hidden power of humanity. The transmission started with a demonstration. A single human drone, smaller than a car, appeared near one of the Empire's scout ships. Before they could react, it released a cloud of nanobots that ate through their hull like it was paper. "That was one drone," James's voice narrated over the footage. "We have millions." The transmission continued, showing more of humanity's real technology. AI-controlled warships emerging from Saturn's rings, quantum weapons that could tear apart space itself, soldiers in powered armor that could fight for weeks without rest. "Every war we fought taught us something," James continued in the transmission. "We learned to be stronger, faster, smarter, but most importantly, we learned to be careful. What you see isn't what you get." In the Imperial command ship, the Lord Regent's smile finally faded. For the first time, doubt crept into his mind. His sensors still showed primitive technology, but the demonstration was undeniable. "Send a message to High Command," he ordered, his voice less confident now. Tell them we might need reinforcements." Back on Earth, James watched the Empire's ships carefully. They were finally starting to understand, but not enough to back down. Their pride wouldn't let them. "They'll attack soon," Thompson said, standing beside James. "They can't accept that a primitive species could be a threat." James nodded. "Then they'll learn the hard way. Humanity spent thousands of years fighting itself. We know every trick, every strategy. They've had peace for so long they've forgotten what real war looks like." As if to prove his point, alerts began flashing across the command screens. The Empire was moving its ships into attack formation. "Let them come," James said quietly. "We warned them to run. Now they'll understand why." The first shots of a war that would change the galaxy forever were about to be fired, and humanity was more than ready. The Imperial fleet moved toward Mars, their golden ships forming a perfect attack pattern. The Lord Regent stood proudly on his command bridge, ready to teach these humans a lesson about defying the Empire. "Target their Mars colony," he ordered. "A small demonstration will show them their place." His fleet commanders nodded, charging their main weapons. Their scans showed only a small, weak colony on Mars. An easy target. What they didn't see were the thousands of defense platforms hidden just beneath the red planet's surface. In Earth's command center, Admiral James watched the Imperial fleet approach. "They're falling for it," he said calmly. "All units hold position. Let them take the first shot." The Empire's ships opened fire, their energy weapons lighting up space with brilliant purple beams. They expected to see the Mars colony explode into dust. Instead, something incredible happened. The surface of Mars seemed to come alive. Hidden doors in the ground slid open, revealing row after row of defense turrets. A shimmering shield appeared, absorbing the Empire's attack like it was nothing. "Impossible," the Lord Regent shouted, watching his perfect attack fail. "Their technology, they couldn't have." "Return fire," James commanded, his voice steady. "Show them what a real fight looks like." The defense platforms around Mars activated all at once, but they didn't fire normal weapons. Instead, they released swarms of tiny robots, each smaller than a coin. The Empire watched in horror as these nanobots surrounded their ships. "My lord," one of the Imperial officers shouted. "Our shields, they're not stopping them." The nanobots passed through the Empire's energy shields like they weren't even there. They began taking apart the Imperial ships piece by piece, turning mighty warships into clouds of floating metal in minutes. "Fall back," the Lord Regent ordered, real fear in his voice for the first time. "Get us out of range." But the humans weren't done. From behind Mars moons, automated fighter ships appeared. Unlike the clumsy rockets the Empire had seen before, these were sleek, fast, and controlled by advanced AI. They moved in ways no living pilot could, dodging all return fire. "Sir," Officer Mike reported to James, "the Empire is losing 30% of their fleet. 40%. 50%. James nodded. "Send in the Ghost Fleet." From Jupiter's atmosphere, where they had been hiding, human warships emerged. They used technology the Empire had never seen before, ships that could bend light around them, appearing and disappearing at will. The Lord Regent watched in horror as his mighty fleet was torn apart by an enemy he had dismissed as primitive. "How?" he demanded. "How did we not see this coming?" On his command screen, Admiral James' face appeared. "You saw what we wanted you to see. Humans learned long ago. Never show your real strength until you have to use it." The battle lasted less than an hour. When it was over, half of the Imperial fleet was destroyed. The rest retreated in panic, their perfect formation forgotten. In Earth's command center, General Thompson stood next to James, watching the Empire's ships flee. "That was just our outer defense line," he said. "Wait until they see what we have around Earth." James smiled slightly. "They won't be back with just a small fleet next time. They'll bring everything they have." "Good," Thompson replied. "Let them bring their whole empire. We've been preparing for this for centuries." The remaining Imperial ships jumped to hyperspace, running back to their territory. They left behind a graveyard of destroyed ships and a very clear message. Humanity was not what they seemed. On his retreat ship, the Lord Regent watched recordings of the battle, trying to understand what had happened. These humans had weapons his empire had never imagined. They'd fought in ways that went against all known military doctrine. "Send word to the Emperor," he ordered, his voice shaking. Tell him we found something new, something dangerous." Back on Earth, James looked at the battle reports. Not a single human life had been lost. Their automated defenses had worked perfectly. And that, he said quietly, was us being gentle. The real war was about to begin, and humanity was just getting started. 2 weeks after the Mars battle, the Empire returned. This time, they'd brought their full invasion fleet, 10,000 ships that filled the space between Jupiter and Mars. Their massive vessels blocked out the stars, creating an artificial night in space. Now you will see true imperial power. The Emperor himself appeared on Earth's communication screens. Unlike the Lord Regent, he had golden skin and eyes that glowed with cybernetic enhancements. No species has ever survived our full might. Admiral James stood in Earth's command center, looking at the largest invasion fleet humanity had ever seen. Officer Mike worked at his station, analyzing the enemy ships. They brought their whole fleet, Thompson said, standing beside James, just like we wanted. James nodded. Begin Operation Blackout. Deep in secret bases across the solar system, human quantum computers activated. They sent out invisible waves of energy that the Empire had never encountered before. Suddenly, all Imperial ships lost contact with each other. What's happening? The Emperor demanded as his screens went dark. Why can't we communicate? The Imperial fleet, used to fighting as one connected force, fell into chaos. Their ships could only use simple radio signals, making their movements slow and clumsy. But the humans were ready for this. Launch the swarm, James ordered. From Earth's moon, millions of small black spheres rose into space. Each one was a human AI warship, no bigger than a car but more dangerous than anything the Empire had ever faced. They moved like a cloud of angry insects, surrounding the Imperial ships. Their shields are useless against our quantum weapons, Mike reported. Beginning attack phase. The swarm struck. Each small ship carried weapons that ignored Imperial shields completely. They fired beams of energy that cut through the strongest Imperial armor like it was paper. The Empire's mighty fleet started falling apart. Impossible. The Emperor watched in horror as his ships exploded one after another. Their technology. It's beyond anything we've seen. But humanity wasn't done. From Earth, larger ships launched. Real warships, not the fake ones they had shown before. These vessels carried human crews who had trained their whole lives for this moment. All ships, attack pattern Delta, James commanded. Show them what human warriors can do. The battle turned into chaos for the Empire. Their ships couldn't talk to each other. Their shields didn't work, and now they faced enemies who fought like demons. Human ships moved in ways that seemed to break the laws of physics, appearing and disappearing at will. Send in the boarding teams, Thompson suggested, and James agreed. Special Forces teams, wearing advanced armor suits, teleported directly onto Imperial ships. The Empire's soldiers had never faced close combat like this. The humans moved faster, hit harder, and seemed to know exactly where to strike. In his command ship, the Emperor watched his invasion force being torn apart. How? He demanded. How can they be this strong? James' face appeared on the Emperor's last working screen. We tried to warn you. Humans don't fight for glory or power. We fight to win. Every trick, every strategy, every weapon. We use them all. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the mighty Imperial invasion fleet was in ruins. Thousands of their ships floated dead in space, destroyed by weapons they never saw coming. The Emperor's own ship barely escaped, running away with just a handful of survivors. Casualties? James asked after the battle. Minimal, Mike reported. We lost 12 ships and 37 soldiers. The Empire lost over 8,000 ships and nearly 2 million troops. James looked at the battlefield, now filled with floating wreckage. Send a message to all Imperial worlds. Tell them what happened here. Tell them why they should never threaten Earth again. In his fleeing ship, the Emperor received reports of the disaster. His mighty fleet, the strongest in the galaxy, had been destroyed by a species he thought was primitive. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Empire faced an enemy it couldn't beat. "What have we done?" he whispered, watching recordings of the battle. "What kind of monsters did we awaken?" On Earth, humanity prepared for what would come next. The Empire wouldn't stop after one defeat. But now they knew. Humans weren't just ready for war. They were masters of it. 1 month after defeating the Imperial invasion fleet, humanity decided to strike back. Admiral James stood on the bridge of Earth's newest warship, the Thunderstrike, leading a fleet of 500 vessels toward Imperial space. Operation Thunderstrike is now active, James announced to all ships. The Empire thought we would stay defensive. Time to show them how wrong they were. The human fleet looked small compared to what the Empire had sent, but each ship carried technology that had been kept secret for decades. They didn't need numbers to win. They needed surprise. First target, James ordered, Imperial Forward Base 7. The human fleet jumped through space using their advanced drives. Unlike Imperial ships that needed specific routes, human vessels could appear anywhere. They materialized inside the Imperial base's defense network before anyone could raise an alarm. "They're scanning us," Officer Mike reported from his station. "Their sensors show only merchant ships." James smiled. Another human trick. Their ships could change how they looked to enemy scanners. The Empire saw what looked like harmless trading vessels, right until the moment of attack. "All ships, combat mode," James ordered. The human fleet transformed. Cloaking fields dropped, revealing heavily armed warships. Before the Imperial base could react, waves of nano-weapons and quantum torpedoes struck their defenses. "Base shields failing," Mike reported. "Their defense grid is down." But James had another surprise ready. From the human ships, small pods launched toward the base. Each pod contained a squad of Special Forces soldiers in powered armor suits. These weren't normal troops. They were human A hybrids, soldiers with computer-enhanced minds. "Breach teams, go," James commanded. The hybrid soldiers crashed through the base's walls like they were paper. Imperial troops found themselves fighting enemies that moved too fast to see, could think faster than computers, and knew every weak point in their armor. "Sir," Mike called out, "Imperial reinforcements approaching. 300 ships." "Perfect," James replied. "Spring the trap." As the Imperial ships arrived to help their base, they found themselves caught in a human ambush. More Earth ships appeared behind them, led by General Thompson. The Empire's fleet was caught between two forces. "Their tactics don't work against us," Thompson's voice came over the radio. "They fight like it's a parade, all in straight lines." The battle turned into chaos, the kind of chaos humans excelled at. Imperial ships tried to fight in formal patterns while human vessels darted around them like angry wasps, striking from impossible angles. Inside the Imperial base, the hybrid soldiers reached the command center. They didn't just fight. They hacked into Imperial systems, turning the base's own defenses against it. Within an hour, the mighty forward base surrendered. "Base secured," the Special Forces commander reported. "We found their strategic data. We know where all their bases are now." James nodded, watching as the last Imperial ships either fled or surrendered. "Send the data to all human fleets. Begin Phase 2. Across Imperial space, more human ships appeared. They struck quickly, destroyed their targets, and vanished before help could arrive. This wasn't the honorable combat the Empire knew. This was guerrilla warfare on a galactic scale. "Message from Earth Command," Mike said. "All primary targets have been hit. The Empire's defense network is in chaos." In his palace on the Imperial capital world, the Emperor watched in horror as reports flooded in. These humans didn't fight like any enemy they'd faced before. They didn't try to hold territory or fight fair. They struck like lightning, destroyed everything important, and disappeared. "How do we fight an enemy that doesn't follow the rules of war?" one of his generals asked. "We made a mistake. The emperor replied, his golden face pale with fear. We thought war had rules. These humans, they only care about winning. Back on the Thunderstrike, James looked at the map of Imperial space. Dozens of their most important bases were now burning or captured. The mighty empire that had never lost a war was learning a harsh lesson. Send the emperor another message, James ordered. Tell him this is just the beginning. We warned them to run. Now they'll learn why. The counterattack had begun, and humanity was just getting started. The Empire was about to learn that starting a war with humans was the biggest mistake they'd ever made. 3 months into the war, the Empire faced a problem they never expected. It wasn't just the humans they had to fight anymore. Their own people were turning against them. Admiral James stood in the war room, watching holographic displays of the Imperial worlds. Red dots showed planets where rebellions had started. There were hundreds of them. The Empire's subject species are rising up, Officer Mike reported. They've seen our victories. They know the Empire isn't invincible anymore. On the Imperial capital world, the Emperor faced an angry crowd of representatives from different alien species. They had watched humans defeat the Empire's best fleets and survive attacks that should have destroyed them. We demand freedom, shouted one representative, his green scales shining under the palace lights. If humans can stand against the Empire, so can we. The Emperor tried to maintain control. The humans are just one species. We still rule 1,000 worlds. But as he spoke, more reports came in. Human diplomatic ships had appeared at rebel worlds, offering alliance and support. They brought weapons, shields, and most importantly, they brought hope. Sir, Mike told James, showing him new data, 50 Imperial battle groups have surrendered. Their crews are refusing to fight. James nodded. This was part of the human plan all along. They hadn't just prepared for physical war, they had prepared for psychological warfare too. Send them the next package, he ordered. Across Imperial space, every communication channel began showing the same thing, recordings of human wars. But not just any wars. They showed how humans fought to free themselves from oppression. They showed revolutions, resistance movements, and victories against overwhelming odds. Let them see, James said quietly. Let them learn what we learned, that the strongest empires can fall when people fight for freedom. The effect was immediate. More imperial worlds declared independence. Alien species that had served the Empire for thousands of years remembered what freedom felt like. The Empire's mighty war machine began falling apart from the inside. In his palace, the Emperor watched his empire crumbling. His military leaders were deserting. His loyal subjects were rebelling. And the humans kept winning every battle. My lord, a general reported, his silver uniform now dirty from battle, our forces in Sector 7 have joined the rebels. They say humans showed them a better way. The Emperor slammed his fist on his golden throne. How? How are they defeating us without even fighting most of our forces? The answer came from an old military advisor. They're using our own strength against us. We built an empire that depends on absolute control. They showed our people that control can be broken. On Earth, James received another report. This time from the Special Forces teams they had sent into Imperial territory. The Empire's War Council is collapsing. The team leader reported. We found their secret files. They've never faced an enemy who fights like us. They don't know how to handle an opponent who changes tactics every battle. James turned to General Thompson. How many Imperial ships have joined our side? Over 2,000, Thompson replied. And more coming every day. The Empire's troops are tired of fighting for a losing cause. The Emperor made one last attempt to hold his empire together. He sent a message to all his worlds, demanding loyalty. But when he finished speaking, the humans hijacked his broadcast. They showed footage of Earth's own history, of empires that fell, of tyranny defeated, of people fighting for freedom. They showed how humans had learned from every war, how they had grown stronger by facing their own dark times. Your empire is built on fear, James' voice announced across Imperial space. But we humans know something stronger than fear: hope. We offered you a chance to run. Now your own people are running to us. In the war room, James looked at the latest reports. The Empire was facing revolts on thousands of worlds. Their fleets were surrendering or joining the rebels. The mighty empire that had ruled for 10,000 years was falling apart in just a few months. Send word to all rebel worlds, James ordered. Tell them Earth stands ready to help. The Empire's time is ending. The Empire hadn't just lost a war with humans. They had lost their power over their own people. And it was all because they didn't listen to a simple warning: run. 6 months after the war began, Admiral James stood on the bridge of the Thunderstrike, watching the Imperial capital whirl through the main viewport. The mighty planet, once the center of galactic power, now looked small and vulnerable. The Emperor requests a meeting. Officer Mike reported. He's ready to discuss peace terms. In the Imperial Palace's Grand Hall, once filled with confident nobles, now stood only a handful of defeated leaders. The Emperor sat on his golden throne, his proud posture gone. James walked in with a small team of human officers, their boots echoing in the quiet room. You could have destroyed us completely, the Emperor said, his voice tired. Why didn't you? James stopped in front of the throne. Because that's not what humans do anymore. We learned from our own wars that total destruction helps no one. We just wanted you to understand one thing: never threaten Earth. The Emperor nodded slowly. We've learned that lesson well. Too well. He pressed a button, and a hologram appeared, showing the Empire's losses. Thousands of ships destroyed, hundreds of worlds in rebellion, millions of soldiers either dead or surrendered. Your terms, the Emperor asked. James pulled out a data tablet. First, freedom for any world that wants it. Second, a new galactic council where all species have equal voice. Third, the Empire must be transformed into a cooperative alliance, not a dictatorship. The Emperor looked surprised. That's more generous than we expected. There's one more thing, James added. We want you to study human history, all of it. Every war, every battle, every revolution. Learn why we fought the way we did. In the following weeks, as peace spread across the galaxy, the Empire's leaders began their study of human history. They watched in amazement as humans showed them everything: their victories, their defeats, their mistakes, and their growth. They weren't primitive at all, one Imperial scholar said, watching footage of Earth's world wars. They were experienced. Every conflict taught them something new. On Earth, the military council met one last time to discuss the war. General Thompson stood before them, presenting the final numbers. We destroyed half their fleet without losing more than 100 ships, he reported. But more importantly, we helped free thousands of worlds without destroying them. James nodded. And now they understand. The galaxy knows why we warned them to run. Not because we wanted to fight, but because we knew how to fight too well. The new Galactic Council formed, with representatives from Earth sitting alongside former Imperial worlds and newly freed planets. The Emperor himself attended, no longer as a ruler, but as one voice among many. We thought we were teaching primitive humans their place, the Emperor admitted to the Council. Instead, they taught us that true strength isn't about controlling others. It's about knowing when and how to use your power. In the years that followed, human technology and knowledge spread throughout the galaxy. But more important than their weapons or ships was their experience, their understanding of conflict, peace, and everything in between. James stood in his office on Earth, looking at a piece of the first Imperial ship they had destroyed. It sat on his desk as a reminder. Message from the Emperor, Mike said, entering the room. They've finished studying the world wars. He says he finally understands why we were so ready for them. James smiled slightly. What did he learn? That humans don't fight because we love war, Mike replied. We fight because we've learned from every war how terrible they are. That's why we're so good at it, because we know the cost. The final report of the war was written into galactic history. It didn't focus on the battles won or the ships destroyed. Instead, it carried a simple message for any future power that might think of threatening Earth. Humans warned us to run. We didn't listen. We thought they were primitive because they didn't show their strength. We were wrong. They weren't primitive. They were veterans of 1,000 wars. They didn't show their strength because they didn't want to use it. Remember their warning. If humans tell you to run, run. Because if you force them to fight, you've already lost. And so the galaxy learned a lesson that would last for generations. Never mistake patience for weakness, especially when dealing with humans. Because sometimes the most dangerous species isn't the one that wants to fight. It's the one that knows how to win.